Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about TF2 and how the classes rank when it comes to skill floors in my opinion. So I do have a pretty solid amount of hours in this game, which does not mean everything I say is gospel, but it gives perspective as to why I may or may not share your views on the skill required for a class, and do remember that this is all my opinion. Now, if you don't know what a skill floor or a skill ceiling is, a skill floor gauges the minimum skill needed in order to succeed at whatever it is that you're trying to talk about. And of course, in this case, we're talking about TF2 mercs. And a skill ceiling is the skilling needed to hit the absolute maximum potential of whatever it is that you're trying to talk about. So in this video, I'll go over how I think the mercs we all love place when it comes to skill floors. And I'm going to be kind of thinking and contextualizing this as if we're watching like a completely brand new player hop into a casual game and play these classes. So the longer on average it takes this new player to be able to consistently succeed at that class, whatever success means for that class, like the higher they will rank on the tier list. So as you can see, the bottom tier is a 5-minute skill floor, which doesn't literally mean it takes 5 minutes to hit the skill floor. It just means that to hit the minimum success potential of that class, it takes a pretty short amount of time. And then going up from there, the tiers are pretty self-explanatory. All right, so with all that out of the way, let's get into it. Alright, so number 1 is going to be Scout, which he's a great foundation for this tier list. So Scout is when you're looking at it from the outside, he's a very straightforward class in which new players at least a completely baseline know how he's supposed to be played. You know, he's fast, he's got a lot of in-your-face options, and he's very hard to catch. So Scout, in my opinion, though, isn't not particularly easy to play, even though he's easy to understand. And the reason I think that is because in order to consistently get kills as Scout, you do have to hit your shots, because you can't fall back on stuff like Soldier can or other classes can, like a Demo Man, for splash damage and shit. You actually have to be able to whenever you close the distance between people. He's very squishy, so you have to be able to actually hit people whenever you get close to them. And so that's why I would say he's around the mid-tier, because I don't consider him to be at the higher echelon of gameplay for a new player, because he does not need the same baseline and a bunch of different skills to be able to play. But I would say he's probably the most solid mid-tier when it comes to a skill floor. Now for the Soldier in my eyes has one of, if not the biggest differences when it comes to the skill floor versus the skill ceiling. Soldier's skill ceiling is very high in my opinion, but honestly, I don't consider his skill floor to be particularly high. If you've played TF2 for a long time, if you're a brand new player, you know that you can get plenty of very easy kills as Soldier. The second you understand the trajectory of his rockets and being able to lead shots and stuff, it's not really hard to be able to kill people. His primary is very easy to lead on, has very forgiving splash damage, and you can consistently get a pretty decent chunk of kills after not a long time of playing. So I know I have gotten plenty of stupid kills that I did not deserve as a new player by just spamming rockets on the payload. So although I do think Soldier is harder to play once you play the game for a long time, when we're talking about skill floors, I would actually consider Soldier to be a pretty easy class to hit the skill floor. So with that in mind, I'm gonna put Soldier at the easy skill floor tier. Alright, Pyro. So it is absolutely no lie that Pyro is the class that new players just love. His primary is the most forgiving, easily aimed primary in the game. It does a lot of damage, and if And even honestly, if it's your very first time queuing up to a game and you play Pyro, you're probably going to get a few kills, even if you die more than you actually get kills. Pyro is, I would say, at an absolute baseline, the absolute easiest class to play in the game. And that's not some kind of like secret either. Almost everyone who plays TF2 knows that Pyro is very easy, and there's nothing wrong with that. Playing him at a baseline is pretty easy, and there are aspects of Pyro that are pretty hard, but being realistic, the skill needed to get like a positive KD as Pyro is not that high. And on a tier list of the highest skill ceilings, I would not consider him to be the absolute bottom tier. But when we're talking about skill floors, I don't think the community at large is wrong in thinking that he is like easy to play. So with that in mind, I would put Pyro into the 5-minute skill floor tier. Okay, now Demo Man on the outside would seem like it would be a pretty easy class to get into as a brand new player. I mean, almost all of his damage, if you're not doing melee damage, is going to be explosive. Or if you're not going to be like a Demo Knight, like just a stock Demo Man, all of his damage is splash damage or some form of it. So you would think that like the aiming, we wouldn't really need to have an exceptionally high skill to be able to play Demo Man even at a baseline. But to be totally honest, the only aspect of Demo Man I think that applies to for brand new players is like sticky traps. Everything else about Demo Man, I would argue, is pretty difficult to play, even at like a baseline. If you're like a brand new player trying to hit pipes, it's pretty hard. Like if you're trying to succeed in this game that already has a bunch of people who mainly have like hundreds, if not thousands of hours, you're probably gonna get slumped a lot as Demo Man. Like Demo Man's probably gonna be one of the classes that you struggle with. And honestly, that was one of the classes that I struggled with trying to get into the game. And although it seems like a strange choice because literally all of his damage is like splash damage, and on the outside it wouldn't seem as if he'd be that hard, I would personally put Demo Man at like the high skill floor here. I wouldn't consider him at the absolute highest for sure, but comparatively to like Soldier, even though they seem pretty similar at a baseline, I would say he's much more difficult to play. Okay, so Heavy, I consider Heavy skill floor to be pretty low, and honestly, there's a few things that go into that. Number one being is that his gameplay and his personal objective for his class during games isn't that complicated at all to understand or to play. Heavy, exactly how you think Heavy would play if you watch like the Meet the Team videos and all that stuff is exactly how he would play. He just shoots people until they die at a very baseline level we're talking about. Obviously there's more to him than just that. But at a very baseline level, he shoots people until they die, he pushes the payload until you win, and basically he is like the absolute tank that everybody tries to target all at once, and you usually have the support of a medic with you as well as most of your team. So usually a Heavy is not completely by himself. Usually his team is there. So there's a lot like that goes into why Heavy, in my opinion, is easy. It's not just the fact that his objective is pretty straightforward. It's not just the fact that he basically just shoots a big gun at people. Has a very forgiving spread until they're dead. But also even little factors like the fact that you almost never see a Heavy by himself. He's usually with at least a medic or the rest of his team trying to do the objective. So I would consider Heavy to be just above Pyro, but not quite in the 5-minute skill floor, just like at the very bottom of the easy skill floor tier. Okay, so Engineer is a pretty interesting placement on this list for me, because I feel a lot of people, when they think of like a brand new player playing an Engineer, they think of easy kills because of like a sentry gun or a nest. And that's definitely true. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort or skill to be able to kill people the Sentry, but honestly, I don't consider that to make him the skill floor easy for him. Considering that what goes into like a good engineer player, or even like a somewhat decent one, is a lot of map knowledge and understandings of how different classes are going to be trying to go for you. So a lot, like for example, like sure, an engineer, a brand new one, could get kills that are stupid by just building like a level 3 somewhere, really dumb, and it kills a couple people, but it's gonna get destroyed eventually. And honestly, that's not a consistent, it's not a consistent thing at all. In reality, like those shitty spots, because they don't really know where to put their guns and all that, it's probably not going to work for very long. And it's the opposite of consistent. And I'm trying to think about a skill floor. I'm trying to think about what minimum does it take for them to consistently do like okay, right? So with that in mind, on top of that, it's not just like, if we're assuming an engineer, a brand new engineer player heads into like a fight that doesn't have a entry gun there, it's going to be really reliant on his skill at being able to aim and all that stuff, similar to like a scout, right? So because of that, I would consider engineer to be around the mid tier. I would put him below scout, but still in the mid tier, because no doubt it's easy to get kills with the sentry, but it's not going to be consistent at all if you're a new player, because you're probably going to be putting sentry guns in like the dumbest places you could possibly put them. So he's not like the hardest to play in the world, but for sure he's easier than a lot. So medic to me, honestly, is not a very hard placement on this list. And honestly, I think calling medic easy is kind of a hard pill to swallow for a lot of the TF2 community. But honestly, if we look at it at a very baseline skills level, just what a medic's role is and just being able to heal your team efficiently enough for them to be able to get the objective, it's not too hard. A lot of what goes into being like a even kind of okay medic is knowing who to heal and being able to position yourself to not die all the time. And honestly, even if we get a brand new medic who just sees some dude with like an unusual and just pockets him the whole game, realistically, he's still probably gonna get a lot of points just by healing the dude, getting a lot of assists and stuff. And honestly, the like tactical skills needed to play a medic versus like a soldier or like a scout or something like that is not exceptionally there. And a lot of new medics are not going to be trying to fight a bunch of people. They're just going to be entirely depending on their team, which honestly, at a casual level, is not even like a super bad idea. Like in order to, you can get a solid amount of points and honestly help out your team a pretty considerable amount as medic without having a lot of knowledge of a medic. And honestly, I feel like that just comes down to because of how crucial of a support role he is. And honestly, that makes sense considering that medic is probably the best class in this game. So it doesn't take a lot from a medic to give a lot. And even just healing like a few people every now and then, even if they don't really know what they're doing, like helps the team a lot. So I would consider him to be in the low skill floor. Sniper. So sniper realistically only needs a couple of skills to be successful in this game, but in all honesty, it does take a while to get even at a baseline level at those skills to succeed as sniper compared to other classes. So the only two really big things about sniper that can have you succeed at like a casual level on TF2 is positioning, so being able to consistently stay far away from people, and number two would be to be able to consistently get headshots. And honestly, those, like, particularly the headshots aspect of that does take a while to be able to consistently be able to get. But honestly, even though he doesn't need as many skills as the rest of the cast to be able to do what he needs to do, it does take a little longer to get good at those few skills that he needs to get good at. So as much as it fucking pains me to say it, I would put Sniper at like the highest tier of a skill floor. I don't consider his skill ceiling to be as high comparatively to the rest of the cast, but I will be honest and say that honestly his skill floor is pretty high compared to everyone else. Okay, so Spy is by a considerable amount the weakest class in this game, and he takes the longest to be able to succeed at. So Spy does not have it easy when it comes to being a new player. If we're being totally real, the amount of things you need to get pretty good at in TF2 to be able to get decent as Spy is like a lot. Like you need to be to have a pretty good understanding of most maps, and then the only really class that is above Spy for like a map understanding is the Engineer. So like he's only really just barely below Engineer in terms of the understanding of the maps that he needs to have. And on top of that, you know, backstabs is super weird and jank in this game, and you need to get pretty good at understanding what a backstab actually is. You need to have a really good understanding of how certain classes are going to try and kill you. And honestly, all of that goes into being able to just kind of perform well as Spy. You don't need to, this isn't just talking about being like a god at Spy. You need to have a pretty decent baseline at most things TF2 to be able to succeed as Spy. So if you're trying to play Spy whenever you're first starting the game, it's going to be like a grueling few weeks even, because it takes a long time to understand that. And honestly, the payoff isn't even as great because the class is like the weakest in the game. So honestly, honestly, I would put Spy at the absolute hardest class to be able to hit the skill floor. And yes, even above Sniper, I feel the skills that he needs to be good at to be able to succeed are just as hard as Sniper's, but he has more of them that he needs to get that good at. And so for that reason, I would put Spy as the absolute highest tier for skill floors in this game. Okay, so now in order, descending from the hardest to the easiest skill floors in my view, we have Spy, Sniper, Demoman, Scout, Engineer, Soldier, Heavy, Medic, and then Pyro. Now, if you disagree with me, that's totally fine. You can let me know how you consider skill floors in this game, or how you would change the tiers that I have. I don't feel particularly this video had many like hot takes that the TF2 community would disagree with as much. I'm gonna make a skill ceiling video soon, which that one is probably gonna differ much more than this one on the general community's takes on the skill ceiling tier list for the different classes. But yeah, beyond that, I'll talk to you guys later, and bye.